Alrighty, so congratulations, you've gotten to the end of week one, and so you're going to have your first review. This will be for every end of the week for the duration of this class. And I just want to go over how they work in general so you have an idea. But do know that you can see, at least in this example, now this may be a future example, future course, so just check the due dates, that normally my due dates are Monday and Thursday, but for the reviews, I actually give you a little more time if you need, but I'd recommend doing it the sooner the better. As an example, on this first one, and this is true with all the reviews, they'll cover the content we have covered in that particular week. So the sooner you do them, more likely it'll be a good experience, hopefully. But let me go over how they work. And I'm going to go ahead and click on here. And when you click here, one thing is that, and this is something in Canvas I know you've all seen, as a matter of fact, already in my course, but in this example, the way the reviews work, they work with generative AI. And so I take all the content and I generate questions and then I format them in, and you're going to go through and answer them. The AI will actually give you hints and suggestions, and you'll see this as I move through an example in a minute. But here's what I want you to know. First, I know it can, like for you, you've seen things like start new attempt, but for these particular reviews, you're going to use the start. Click here to start the review. Okay, so don't click over here, you click down here. And make sure you don't have pop-up blockers going. Now mine is going to open in a new tab. I think that's generally the way these things open. But you do need to, once you start it, complete it. Okay, it does not save. So you need to complete all 10 questions in this example. Now the submission, in order to receive credit, because you actually, this does become a regular assignment that is submitted into Canvas, even though as you'll see once I get started, it's actually initiated outside of Canvas, and you'll see this as we go through. But in order to get credit, you have to go all the way to the end, which is submit assignment. And I'll at least talk about that in the next step. You can do multiple attempts, which I actually recommend. So if you miss something, and by the way, again, the AI will give you some hints. You can have multiple tries, and it'll say, hey, do you want to move on, or do you want to give it another try? So just know, and I'll show you just the way you move through it. But do know that if you start but then you don't complete, I actually have a report I get for starts without completes, and I really want to say don't do that, because that's not the intent. We actually are working on a current version or the next version of this generative AI type review that will handle that better than the way it does here. I don't recommend doing this on a mobile device. A laptop or a desktop is really the best way. And then troubleshooting is, if a question is not visible, you can try scrolling up. And this is something I hope we have a fix for in the next couple weeks. But for this first one, you may run into it. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and say, click here to get started. For me, I'm actually going to leave the student view. I just wanted to show you that, but it will look very similar. For you, you click here to get started. It'll open in a new tab. Now in this new tab, and you don't see it here, and you will see a window that says you have to authorize it based on your username. Okay. I had already been in, so mine didn't ask me. So just know you may get one other screen here. We just want you to understand that everything you're about to do is actually submitted into Canvas ultimately as this assignment. But I just want you to make sure we're clear about that. So what happens here is all the instruction here actually gets copied over from here. So this is a duplicate, just so you know. And notice there's a start button, and there's Q1 through 10, and then there's feedback. And I was talking about the submit assignment. Well, it won't show up until you get to feedback, and then you will see the submit assignment. And in this sense, you have to work through this sequentially. So let's just show you the first one. So once you hit start, then what happens is I'm sending some information programmatically through an API call to OpenAI's API for ChatGPT, or for its large language model. In this case, I think we're using 4.0. Right? And what it did is it took all my information. It said, hey, are you ready? And I told it to instruct you to say start. When you're ready, click Q1, question 1. Okay, so then you will come here and you will look at question 1, and it'll ask you some questions. It'll ask you, what are the 3 core web technologies introed in this course? And so what you will do is you will type your answer here. Right? So if, and again, I'm not going to give you the answers because that's the idea. And in this case, this is something I covered in the intro video. But if you happen to say, which I don't recommend, I don't know, right? It might actually give you a little information, right? So review the transcript, or in that case, transcript coming from the video. It lists the specific technologies you will learn. Okay, now notice though, as soon as I did that, as soon as I responded here, then question 2 is going to open up. Right, so see, and you can't re-click on these. You have to move through it in sequence. So you could at this point go ahead and attempt it, and you want to get full points for this assignment or that specific question. So go ahead and see if you can answer it. Now in my demo here, I'm not going to, because I'm not going to give the answers. I'm just showing you how it works. But now I could go to 2, right? I could go to question 2, and now it'll ask me about that all-important project 0. I'm not sure. Again, not the answer you want to give, but it actually gives you a little hint, right, for where that's at. So attempt it. So really we're just saying, how well did you get that information? So this pattern will continue. Matter of fact, I'm noticing that little quirk, I may have already fixed it because notice if you ever see the question down there and you actually kind of see it bleed over here, you can just use here or use your scroll on your mouse or touchpad or whatever you're using to scroll that up if for some reason you can't see it, but actually may have fixed it already. And notice after you click on each one, it actually gets a little bigger because this little check comes up, and these will be a little smaller, just showing you where you're at. Right? Again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just know once you get to the very end, it'll give you feedback. It'll look at how well you answered the questions. It'll give you a score. It's not to say that's the score I will give you, but at least you have a good idea. And then again, you could but let's not talk about the second attempt yet. And you do have to complete this, like I said, all the way through. If you were to exit now, that would count as an attempt, so don't do that. Complete all the way through to the end, and that way you get to see what the questions are, you get some feedback, and then you can submit it. Okay, now I'm not going to get all the way through. Matter of fact, you know what? I think I'll pause and actually get all the way to the end. Okay. I got all the way to the end, and I did notice that issue I was talking about, and I think I was just naturally scrolling with my mouse. So again, if you don't see, if it shows you the Explorer Assistant is actually what the question is, this is you typing in your answer, right? But if you get all the way to the end and then you hit feedback, notice how now it does get bigger because we have the submit assignment, right? Looks like you've completed. You missed, right? Reviewing. Yeah, so in that case, you've completed it, but that's where I would look at your answers when you submit. So now you're actually ready to submit. Now, again, the idea is for you to actually go through and answer these things, but I'm just showing you how it works, okay? And just one more thing, if you type in a long answer and you click and this actually sends it, you may see this, and just if you see it twirling around, just wait till it's done. It's just doing a communication with the API server for OpenAI, and sometimes a lot of people are hitting that. It could take a moment, and sometimes it's just network traffic. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit here, and then what happens is the assignment is complete. Don't close this, so just wait until this assignment's complete, and then you get this, and then you can close this out. Now what happens then is it actually gets submitted into Canvas. You don't have that by going through that process, then a submission was done. Okay, now this is actually a better example, right? So, and you can see in this example from a test student, I did do more than one, just to show you that example. Okay, so I just wanted to give you how these things work, the due dates, what to go over, what to think about. Please reach out if you have any issues. Do know, again, this is a product that was created by Rick Gomez and myself, so it's still a work in progress, but for the most part, I think it really works. Other prior students who have been in my semester classes have given me good feedback about the way these review work, and I hope you have a good experience of them as well. All right, so once you finish, you can move on to week 2.